The stagecoach rattled into Verdi, Nevada on a blistering August afternoon in 1878, carrying a woman whose veil could not hide the puckered scars that twisted down the left side of her face. And Owen Irwin watched from the porch of his ranch house as the dust settled around the wooden wheels, wondering which mail-order bride had finally answered his advertisement after 6 months of waiting. He had not mentioned his own scars in the letter, the ones that mapped his back from a childhood fire that killed his parents and left him alone at 14. Those scars were hidden beneath cotton and leather, invisible to the world, but they had taught him early that pain leaves marks deeper than skin. The woman stepping down from the stagecoach moved with careful grace, her green traveling dress dusty from the long journey, one gloved hand clutching a worn leather valise. The veil fluttered in the hot Nevada wind, and Owen saw her hesitate before she lifted her chin and walked toward the small crowd gathered near the general store. He should have gone to meet her immediately, but something held him back. Fear, perhaps. The kind of fear that comes from hoping too much for too long. His ranch foreman, Miguel Santos, had been the one to convince him to place the advertisement in the first place. At 32, Owen had built a successful cattle operation spanning 3,000 acres of Nevada rangeland, but the house remained empty except for himself and the 2 ranch hands who bunked in the smaller building near the barn. Miguel had family children who filled his modest home with laughter. Owen had silence and the distant sound of cattle lowing in the evening. The woman was looking around now, her head turning slowly as if searching for someone. Owen pushed away from the porch railing and started walking down the dirt road toward town. His boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each step. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and dance above the ground. Verdi sat nestled along the Truckee River where California met Nevada, a small settlement that had grown around the railroad and now served the surrounding ranches and mines. It was not much, but it was home. As he approached, the stagecoach driver was already pulling away, heading toward the station to change horses. The woman stood alone now, her valise at her feet, and Owen could see the way her shoulders were set, braced as if expecting a blow. He knew that posture. He had worn it himself for years after the fire, waiting for people to recoil, to turn away, to let pity or disgust cloud their eyes. He stopped 3 feet from her, removed his hat, and met her gaze directly. Her eyes were blue, the color of the Sierra Nevada sky at dawn, and they widened slightly as she took in his tall frame, his sun-weathered face, the dark hair that fell across his forehead. He saw the moment she steeled herself, preparing for his reaction. "Miss Beatrice Owens." His voice came out rougher than he intended, scraped raw by years of shouting orders across open prairie. Yes, her voice was soft but steady, with an accent that spoke of eastern cities and education. "You are Mr. Irwin, Owen, please." He watched as she lifted one gloved hand to her veil, hesitating. "May I?" She flinched, and he saw her throat work as she swallowed. "I should tell you first. The advertisement I answered, I was truthful about everything except one detail. I should have mentioned the fire." The words came quickly, as if she had rehearsed them during the long journey west. 3 years ago in Philadelphia, the factory where I worked caught fire. I was fortunate to escape with my life, but as you can see, she gestured toward the veil, I would not blame you if you wish to send me back. I can work in town until I earn enough for passage. Owen felt something tighten in his chest, an old familiar ache. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and carefully lifted the veil. The scars ran from her left temple down to her jaw, puckered and twisted, pulling at the corner of her mouth. Someone had stitched the wounds poorly, leaving the skin uneven and discolored. The damage was extensive, but as he studied her face, he found himself looking past the scars to the delicate bone structure beneath, the clear intelligence in her eyes, the determined set of her unscarred jaw. He cupped her scarred cheek gently in his calloused palm, feeling her tremble beneath his touch. "I see only beauty," he said quietly, meaning every word. "Welcome home, Beatrice." A sound escaped her throat, something between a sob and a gasp. Tears welled in her blue eyes, and Owen felt his own vision blur. He had imagined this moment countless times during the 6 months of waiting, but he had never expected this overwhelming rush of recognition, as if some part of his soul had been waiting for her specifically. For this woman with scars that mirrored his own invisible wounds. "You cannot mean that," she whispered. "People cross the street when they see me. Children cry. I lost my position at the haberdashery because customers complained. Then they are fools." Owen lowered his hand but maintained eye contact. "I have scars too. Mine are just easier to hide. But I learned something from them, Miss Owens. I learned that what survives fire is stronger than what never burned. You are here alive, brave enough to travel 2,000 miles to marry a stranger. That tells me more about who you are than any mark on your skin." Beatrice pressed her lips together, clearly fighting for composure. The unscarred side of her face was lovely, with high cheekbones and smooth, pale skin that suggested she had been beautiful before the fire. But Owen found himself drawn to the scarred side, to the evidence of what she had survived, the physical proof of her strength. "I should explain the circumstances," she said after a moment. "I am 24 years old. I worked in a textile factory after my father died, leaving debts that consumed everything we owned. My mother passed when I was 16. I have no family, no prospects, and after the fire, no hope of any. When I saw your advertisement seeking a wife willing to work hard and build a life in Nevada, I thought perhaps—" She trailed off, looking away. "I thought perhaps someone far from Philadelphia might overlook my circumstances. There is nothing to overlook." Owen picked up her valise, surprised by its light weight. "You have traveled far. The ranch is 2 miles north along the river. I have a wagon at the livery. We can collect your other belongings, and this is all I have." She gestured to the single bag. Everything else was lost in the fire or sold to pay debts. Owen nodded slowly, recalculating. He had imagined a woman arriving with trunks full of dresses and keepsakes, the accumulated possessions of a lifetime. Instead, Beatrice had come west with almost nothing, starting fresh in a way that was both heartbreaking and courageous. "Then we will see about getting you what you need. There is a dressmaker in town, Mrs. Chen, who does excellent work, and the general store stocks most necessities." He offered his arm, and after a brief hesitation, Beatrice took it. Her hand was small even through the glove, and he could feel the slight tremor in her fingers. They walked toward the livery stable in silence. Owen was aware of the stares from the townspeople, the way conversations paused as they passed. But he also noticed Sarah Thompson, the schoolteacher, offer Beatrice a warm smile, and old Jeremiah, who ran the saloon, tip his hat respectfully. Verdi was a small town, but it had been built by survivors, by people who had left everything behind to chase new lives in the unforgiving Western territories. Perhaps they recognized one of their own. The wagon ride to the ranch gave Owen time to point out the landmarks. The Truckee River wound through the valley, lined with cottonwoods that provided blessed shade in the brutal summer heat. To the west, the Sierra Nevada mountains rose like a wall against the horizon, their peaks still holding patches of snow even in August. To the east, the high desert stretched endlessly, broken only by sage and scrub and the occasional rocky outcropping. "It is beautiful," Beatrice said softly. "So much space. In Philadelphia, buildings blocked out the sky. Here, it goes on forever." "Gets lonely sometimes," Owen admitted. "But it grows on you. There is something about being able to see for miles, knowing you built something in all this emptiness. The ranch started with 50 head of cattle and a one-room cabin 8 years ago. Now we run close to 3,000 head and the house has 6 rooms." "You built it yourself?" She turned to look at him, genuine interest lighting her features. "With help. Miguel, my foreman, has been with me since the beginning. His wife Rosa cooks for the ranch hands and helps with the heavy cleaning. They have 3 children who treat the place like their own. Then there is James, who manages the horses, and Thomas, who is young but learning fast. We hire on extra hands during roundup and branding, but mostly it is just us." The ranch house came into view as they rounded a bend in the road. Owen had always been proud of what he had built, but now, seeing it through Beatrice's eyes, he noticed the peeling paint on the shutters, the porch that sagged slightly on one side, the general air of masculine neglect. The house was functional, sturdy, built to withstand harsh winters and scorching summers, but it lacked any softness, any feminine touch. Beatrice was quiet as he helped her down from the wagon. Her eyes traveled over the house, the barn, the corrals where horses stood switching their tails at flies, the smaller bunkhouse where smoke rose from the chimney. Miguel emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag, his weathered face breaking into a broad smile. "You must be Miss Owens." "Welcome, welcome. Rosa has been cooking all day, preparing a feast for your arrival. She will be so pleased to meet you." Miguel's enthusiasm was infectious, and Owen saw some of the tension ease from Beatrice's shoulders. "That is very kind." Beatrice's hand went unconsciously to her veil, which Owen realized she had lowered again during the wagon ride. "I hope I will not be a disappointment." "Impossible," Miguel declared. Owen has been insufferable for months, checking the road every time he heard a wagon. Now perhaps he will focus on work again instead of mooning about like a lovesick calf. "Miguel." Owen's tone held a warning, but he could not quite suppress a smile. "Miss Owens must be exhausted from her journey. Perhaps we should let her rest before subjecting her to your commentary." Miguel laughed and headed toward the bunkhouse, calling for Rosa. Owen picked up the valise again and led Beatrice up the porch steps. The front door opened into a large main room that served as both kitchen and sitting area. The furniture was plain but well made, mostly pine and oak that Owen had crafted himself during the long winter evenings. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and windows on the south side let in the afternoon light. "The bedrooms are down that hall." Owen gestured to a narrow corridor. "I have prepared the largest one for you. It has a window facing the river and a chest of drawers. The washroom is at the end of the hall. I had a proper bathtub brought in from Sacramento last year, and we have a well that provides good clean water. My room is—" He paused, suddenly awkward. "We should discuss the sleeping arrangements. I do not expect anything from you, Miss Owens. Not until you are ready, if ever. This marriage can be whatever you need it to be." Beatrice set down her valise and turned to face him fully. She lifted her veil with both hands, folding it back over her hair, and met his eyes. In the softer indoor light, her scars seemed less severe, though he knew that was probably just his eyes adjusting. What struck him more was the vulnerability in her expression, the careful hope that she was trying so hard to protect. "I came here to be a wife," she said quietly. "I answered your advertisement in good faith, with the intention of fulfilling all the duties that entails. I will not pretend that I am not frightened. I have never been with a man, and after the fire, I assumed I never would be. But you have been kinder to me in 1 hour than anyone has been in 3 years. I will do my best to be a good wife to you, Owen Irwin, in every way." Owen felt his throat tighten. He crossed the room slowly, giving her time to change her mind, and took both her hands in his. She was small compared to his 6-foot frame, the top of her head barely reaching his shoulder. Without the veil, he could see that her hair was a rich auburn color, pulled back in a simple bun that had come loose during the journey. "We have time," he said gently. "All the time you need. I have waited this long, I can wait longer. What I want, Beatrice, is a partner. Someone to share this life with, to build something with. The rest will come when it comes, or it will not, and either way, you will have a home here." She squeezed his hands, and he felt the first genuine smile curve her lips, pulling at the scarred skin. "You are an unusual man, Owen Irwin. I think I made the right choice in coming here." A knock at the door interrupted them, and Rosa bustled in without waiting for an answer, her round face beaming. She was a small woman with dark hair streaked with gray, and she moved with the confident energy of someone completely comfortable in her surroundings. Behind her, 3 children peeked around the doorframe with open curiosity. "Miss Owens, welcome, welcome. I am Rosa Santos, and these troublemakers are my children. Maria, 10 years old, Carlos, 8, and little Sophia, who is 6. We are so happy you are here. The house needs a woman's touch. I have been saying this for years, but Owen is stubborn and will not let me do more than basic cleaning." Rosa's words tumbled over each other in a rush of warmth and acceptance. Beatrice looked overwhelmed but pleased. "Thank you, Mrs. Santos. I am grateful for your kindness. Rosa, please. We do not stand on formality here." Rosa shooed her children back outside, then turned to Owen. "The stew is ready, and I have made fresh bread. Dinner will be at sunset, as usual. That gives Miss Owens time to freshen up and rest. Come, I will show you the bedroom." Owen watched as Rosa took charge, leading Beatrice down the hallway and chattering about the ranch, the town, and everything Beatrice might need to know. He heard Rosa's voice explaining the bathtub, the linens, where to find towels and soap. And beneath it all, he heard Beatrice's softer responses, questions asked in her Eastern accent that would soon be tempered by Western living. Miguel appeared in the doorway, his expression knowing. "She is perfect for you," he said in Spanish, a language he knew Owen understood from years of working together. "She deserves better than a scarred rancher in the middle of nowhere," Owen replied in the same language. "She deserves someone who sees her clearly, which you do." Miguel clapped him on the shoulder. "Now come. The cattle in the north pasture need checking, and you need to stop looking like you have been struck by lightning. The work helped. It always did." Owen rode out with Miguel to check on the herd, inspecting the newest calves and making sure the water sources had not dried up in the August heat. The physical labor, the familiar rhythm of ranch work, steadied him. But his mind kept returning to the ranch house, to the woman who was even now settling into what would be her home, and he found himself working faster, more efficiently, eager to return. By the time they rode back as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Owen had made several decisions. First, he would give Beatrice all the time and space she needed. Second, he would show her through actions, not just words, that she was valued here. And third, he would do everything in his power to make sure she never regretted the choice to come west. Dinner was a revelation. Rosa had outdone herself with a rich beef stew flavored with herbs from her garden, fresh bread still warm from the oven, and a pie made with preserved peaches. They ate at the long wooden table in the main room, and Owen was struck by how natural it felt to have Beatrice sitting across from him. asking Miguel about the different cattle breeds and listening intently as James explained his methods for training horses. She had changed out of her traveling dress into something simpler, a plain gray cotton dress that had seen better days but was clean and neatly mended. Her hair was still damp from washing, and she had left the veil off, though Owen noticed how her hand occasionally moved toward her scarred cheek in an unconscious gesture of self-consciousness. Rosa's children, after initial wide-eyed staring, had accepted Beatrice's appearance with the easy adaptability of youth and were now competing to tell her stories about ranch life. And then Carlos tried to ride the bull calf, Maria was saying, her eyes dancing with mischief. Papa was so angry, he made Carlos muck out the entire barn by himself. I was 7, Carlos protested. How was I supposed to know it would buck like that? Maybe because it is a bull, Sophia suggested with the devastating logic of a 6-year-old. Beatrice laughed, a clear, genuine sound that made Owen's chest ache. When was the last time this house had heard laughter like that? When had it ever? After dinner, Rosa herded her children back to their own quarters, and the ranch hands retreated to the bunkhouse for their evening card game. Owen found himself alone with Beatrice, the silence between them comfortable in a way he had not expected. She helped him clear the table without being asked, moving around the kitchen as if learning its geography. "You do not have to do that," he said, as she began washing dishes in the basin. "Rosa usually handles the cleaning. I need to earn my keep." Beatrice's hands moved efficiently through the soapy water, "and I prefer to be useful. The months after the fire when I could not work because of the bandages and the pain, those were the hardest. I need purpose, Owen." He picked up a towel and began drying the dishes she handed him. "The ranch can always use an extra pair of hands. Rosa mentioned that we need someone to manage the garden properly. I am hopeless with plants, and Rosa has her hands full with her own family. And the bookkeeping has gotten away from me this year. If you have any head for figures, I kept the books for the factory before the fire." Beatrice's voice was quiet. "I am good with numbers. My father was a banker before he died, and he taught me. Then the job is yours if you want it. I can show you the ledgers tomorrow. Fair warning, they are a disaster. I am better with cattle than with accounting." They worked in silence for a while, falling into an easy rhythm. Owen found himself studying her profile, the way the lamplight caught in her auburn hair, the delicate curve of her neck. The scars did not diminish her beauty. If anything, they added a dimension of character, a physical manifestation of strength and survival that he found deeply attractive. "May I ask you something?" Beatrice's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Anything? You mentioned you have scars too, hidden ones." She glanced at him, then away. "What happened?" Owen set down the plate he had been drying. It was a fair question, and if they were to build a life together, honesty seemed essential. "My parents died in a fire when I was 14, the farmhouse we lived in Missouri. My father went back inside to save some papers, important documents he thought we would need. My mother went after him. I tried to follow, but the floor collapsed and I fell into the cellar. The burning timbers came down on top of me." He saw Beatrice's hands still in the water, her attention fully on him now. "A neighbor pulled me out eventually. Most of my back was burned from my shoulders to my waist. The doctor said I was lucky the scars did not restrict my movement more than they do. I spent 6 months recovering, living with an uncle who resented every moment of my presence. As soon as I could work, I took a job on a cattle drive heading west. I was 15, lying about my age, hurting so badly some mornings I could barely stand. But the alternative was staying in Missouri, surrounded by memories and pity. So I came west. Beatrice pulled her hands from the water and dried them carefully on her apron. Then, moving slowly, she crossed to where he stood and placed one hand gently on his back, over his shirt where she must have guessed the scars lay beneath. Her touch was feather-light, questioning. "May I?" she asked softly. Owen's heart hammered in his chest. He had not shown his scars to anyone in years, not since the last doctor he had consulted in Sacramento. But something about Beatrice's quiet request, the vulnerability in her voice, made him nod. He unbuttoned his shirt with fingers that shook slightly, then pulled it off and turned around, presenting his back to her. The scars were extensive, rippled and twisted, discolored patches that covered most of his upper back. He heard her sharp intake of breath, then felt her fingers trace the damaged skin with a gentleness that made his eyes sting. "We match," she whispered. "Two survivors, two people who carry our past on our skin." Owen turned back to face her, his shirt still hanging loose in one hand. Beatrice's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but she was smiling, that crooked smile that pulled at her scarred cheek. On impulse, he lifted his hand to her face, cupping her scarred side again as he had done in town. "I meant what I said earlier. I see only beauty when I look at you. Beauty and strength and courage. You are extraordinary, Beatrice Owens." She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "No one has touched my scars like this, as if they are something precious rather than something shameful. They are precious. They are proof that you survived, that you are here." Owen leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed his lips gently to her scarred temple. She gasped, and her hands came up to grip his bare shoulders, careful to avoid the worst of his scars. They stood like that for a long moment, two damaged people finding unexpected wholeness in each other's arms. When Beatrice finally pulled back, her cheeks were flushed, and Owen saw desire flicker in her blue eyes before uncertainty replaced it. "I should retire," she said softly. "It has been a very long day and I am exhausted." Owen nodded, releasing her reluctantly. "Of course, sleep as late as you need. There is no rush to begin working immediately." But Beatrice was already shaking her head. "I will rise at dawn. There is much to learn, and I do not want to be perceived as lazy or unwilling to contribute." "No one would think that," Owen assured her, but he recognized the fierce pride in her voice, the need to prove herself. He understood it too well. "But the decision is yours. Good night, Beatrice." "Good night, Owen." She paused in the doorway to the hallway, looking back at him. "Thank you for everything, for seeing me, for being kind, for giving me a chance at a new life. I will not waste it." After she disappeared down the hallway, Owen stood in the kitchen for a long time, his shirt still unbuttoned, his mind racing. He had expected to feel awkward, uncertain, perhaps even disappointed when his mail-order bride finally arrived. Instead, he felt something he had not experienced in years: hope. The bone-deep, terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, he could build the life he had always dreamed of with a woman who understood pain and survival in ways no one else could. He finally pulled his shirt back on and stepped outside into the cool night air. The stars were brilliant overhead, uncountable points of light in the vast Nevada darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled and cattle lowed in response. This was his world, harsh and beautiful in equal measure, and now Beatrice was part of it. The next morning, Owen woke before dawn out of long habit. He dressed quietly and made his way to the kitchen, intending to start coffee before heading out to check on the horses. But he stopped short in the doorway, surprised to find Beatrice already there, fully dressed, working on rekindling the fire in the cook stove. "I could not find the coffee," she said without turning around, somehow sensing his presence. "And I was not sure how much to use for the pot." Owen moved to help her, showing her where Rosa kept the supplies and demonstrating the ratio of grounds to water that produced the strong brew the ranch hands preferred. They worked together in the pre-dawn darkness, lit only by the growing fire in the stove, and Owen found himself acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle scent of soap and lavender that clung to her skin. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Better than I have in months. The quiet here is remarkable." In Philadelphia, there was always noise, people shouting, wagons rattling past, factory whistles blowing. Here, I could hear the river and the wind and nothing else. It was lovely. The coffee pot began to bubble, filling the kitchen with its rich aroma. Owen poured 2 cups and handed one to Beatrice, their fingers brushing briefly. She had left her hair down and it fell in loose waves past her shoulders, catching the firelight. Without the severe bun and the concealing veil, she looked younger, softer, more vulnerable. "What are your duties today?" she asked, sipping her coffee and making a face at its strength. "Too strong." Owen felt a smile tug at his lips. "The men like it that way, but I can make a weaker pot for you." "No, I will adjust. What are your duties?" she repeated. "Miguel and I need to ride out to the South Range today. There have been reports of rustlers operating in the area, and I want to check on the herd. It will be a long day, probably past sundown before I return. But James will be around if you need anything, and Rosa is always available." Beatrice set down her cup. "Take me with you." Owen blinked. "I am sorry, take me with you. If I am to be a rancher's wife, I should understand the ranch. I can ride. My father kept horses when I was young before his financial troubles. I am not afraid of hard work or long hours. Please, Owen. Do not leave me behind to wander the house like a useless ornament." There was steel beneath the soft request, and Owen recognized it for what it was: Beatrice establishing her place, refusing to be sidelined or protected to the point of uselessness. He considered the request seriously. The ride would be long and hot, possibly dangerous if they did encounter rustlers. But she was right that she needed to learn the ranch, and he would be lying if he said he did not relish the prospect of spending the day with her. "All right," he said finally, "but you need proper clothing. Those dresses will not work for riding. Rosa might have something that will fit, or we can improvise with some of my old work clothes. And you will need a hat, gloves, and sturdy boots." Beatrice's face lit up with such genuine joy that Owen felt his chest constrict. "I will be ready within the hour." "Thank you, Owen, truly." She hurried off to find Rosa, leaving Owen shaking his head and wondering what he had gotten himself into. Miguel arrived a few minutes later, yawning and stretching, followed by James and Thomas. The coffee had finished brewing, and Owen poured cups for the men while explaining the day's plans. "You are bringing her along?" Miguel raised an eyebrow. "It will be a hard ride, Owen," she asked. "And she has a point about needing to learn the ranch. She has spirit." Miguel nodded approvingly. "Rosa will like that. A woman needs fire to survive out here." When Beatrice emerged an hour later, Owen barely recognized her. Rosa had found a split riding skirt that had belonged to her years ago, before children had changed her figure, and Beatrice wore it with a simple white blouse tucked in at the waist. Her hair was braided down her back, and a wide-brimmed hat shaded her face. Sturdy boots completed the outfit, and work gloves dangled from her belt. "Will this do?" She turned slowly, and Owen realized she was genuinely uncertain, seeking his approval. "You look perfect, like you were born to ranch life." He caught Miguel's knowing glance and ignored it. "The horses are saddled. I put you on Daisy. She is gentle and steady. Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely certain." Beatrice walked toward the barn with confidence, and Owen hurried to catch up. The morning ride was beautiful. They followed the river north, then cut east across open grassland dotted with sagebrush. The cattle were spread across several hundred acres, grazing peacefully, and Owen felt the familiar satisfaction of seeing his herd healthy and thriving. Beatrice rode well, her seat secure and her hands light on the reins. She asked intelligent questions about the cattle, about water sources and grazing rotation and predator management, and Owen found himself explaining concepts he usually took for granted, seeing his work through fresh eyes. By midday, the heat was oppressive. They stopped near a small creek to water the horses and eat the lunch Rosa had packed. Thick sandwiches with sliced beef and cheese, hard-boiled eggs, and apples from the tree in Rosa's garden. Beatrice removed her hat and splashed water on her face, sighing with relief. "It is so hot. Does it ever cool down? Wait until winter. You will be begging for this heat when the snow comes." Owen stretched out in the shade of a cottonwood, patting the ground beside him. Beatrice settled down, maintaining a careful distance that was not quite close enough to touch but nearer than necessary. "Tell me about the rustlers," she said. "Are they a serious threat?" "They can be. Usually it is just opportunistic thieves, taking a few head here and there. But last month the ranch to our south lost nearly 100 cattle in a single night. That is organized professional. If they are moving into this area, I need to know. What will you do if you find them?" Owen was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I will notify the sheriff in Verde. Maybe organize a watch with the other ranchers. I have worked too hard to build this place to let someone steal it out from under me." Beatrice reached over and placed her hand on his arm. "Be careful, please. I did not travel 2,000 miles to become a widow before I even become a proper wife." The words were light, teasing, but Owen heard the genuine concern beneath them. He covered her hand with his own. "I promise to be careful. I have too much to live for now." They held each other's gaze for a long moment, and Owen felt the connection between them strengthen, solidify into something real and undeniable. Then Beatrice pulled her hand back, color rising in her cheeks, and busied herself repacking the lunch supplies. The afternoon brought them to the southern boundary of Owen's land, where wooden fence posts marked the property line. The cattle here seemed more skittish, and Owen's unease grew. Miguel rode ahead, scouting for signs of trouble, while Owen and Beatrice followed more slowly. "Something is wrong," Beatrice said quietly. "I can feel it." Owen nodded. He had learned to trust his instincts years ago, and right now, every instinct was screaming danger. He was about to suggest they turn back when Miguel came galloping over the rise, his face grim. "We have a problem. There are men on your land, Owen. At least 6 of them with a string of your cattle already roped. They are heading for the southern pass." Owen's jaw tightened. "How far?" "Maybe 2 miles. We can intercept them if we ride hard, but Owen," Miguel glanced at Beatrice, "it might get ugly." "Get Beatrice back to the ranch. I will go after them." "No." Beatrice's voice was sharp. "I will not be sent away like a child. Give me a weapon and show me how to use it. 3 guns are better than 2. "Absolutely not. These are dangerous men, Beatrice. If shooting starts, then I want to be there to help, not sitting safely at home wondering if my husband is alive or dead." Her chin came up, stubborn and determined. "This is my home now too, Owen. My ranch. Those are my cattle they are stealing. I have a right to defend what is mine." Miguel coughed, clearly trying to hide a smile. "She makes a good point, my friend." Owen wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she stay safe, but he recognized the futility of it. Beatrice had not survived a fire and traveled across a continent to be relegated to the sidelines. With a sigh, he pulled his spare revolver from his saddlebag and showed her the basics. How to load it, how to aim, how to pull the trigger smoothly rather than jerking it. "Stay behind us. If I tell you to run, you run. Understand?" His voice was harsh with fear for her safety, but Beatrice only nodded calmly. They rode hard toward the southern pass, a narrow gap between two rocky hills that provided the easiest route off Owen's land. As they approached, Owen could see the dust cloud raised by the cattle and the men driving them. He counted quickly. 7 rustlers, all armed, moving with the confidence of men who had done this before. Owen pulled his rifle from its scabbard and fired a warning shot into the air. The rustlers wheeled their horses around, and for a moment, the two groups faced each other across 50 yards of open ground. Owen recognized the leader, a man named Dutch Keller who had a reputation for violence and had been run out of several towns for various crimes. "Those are my cattle, Dutch. Let them go and ride on, and we will call it even." Dutch spit into the dirt. "Possession is 9/10 of the law, Irwin. We have got them now, so I reckon they are ours." "I reckon not." Owen kept his voice level, but his finger was on the trigger, ready. Beside him, Miguel had drawn his own weapon, and even Beatrice had pulled the revolver, holding it with shaking hands but determined eyes. "You brought a woman to a gunfight," Dutch laughed, "but there was an edge to it. That your new bride we heard about, shame about her face. Maybe I will take her along with the cattle, teach her what a real man feels like." Owen felt rage surge through him, hot and immediate. "You will not touch her. You will not even look at her. Now turn those cattle loose and ride, or by God, Dutch, I will end you right here." The tension stretched taut, ready to snap. Owen could see the calculation in Dutch's eyes, weighing the odds. 7 against 3 were good numbers, but 3 determined people with the high ground and righteous anger could shift those odds considerably. And Dutch had to know that killing a rancher would bring the full weight of the law down on his head, such as it was in Nevada in 1878. Finally, Dutch shrugged. "Keep your damn cattle, and your scarred woman, plenty more of both to be had." He gestured to his men, and they wheeled their horses around, galloping south without looking back. Owen did not lower his rifle until they were out of sight. Then he let out a breath he had not realized he was holding and turned to Beatrice. She was pale but steady, still gripping the revolver. "You can lower it now," he said gently, reaching over to take the gun from her trembling hands. "It is over." "I would have shot him." Her voice was quiet but certain. "When he said those things about me, about taking me, I would have pulled the trigger." "I know." Owen holstered the revolver, then reached across the space between their horses to take her hand. "You were incredibly brave, and incredibly foolish to insist on coming, but mostly brave." Beatrice managed a shaky smile. "He called me your bride. Are we truly married, Owen?" "I know there was no ceremony, no preacher. We will fix that as soon as we get back to town. If you still want to marry me after today's excitement." "I do. I absolutely do." She squeezed his hand tightly. "When he threatened to take me, all I could think was that I had just found you, found this place, found a reason to hope again. I could not let him steal that." Miguel cleared his throat. "This is very touching, but we should get the cattle back to the main herd and then get home. It will be dark soon, and I do not trust Dutch to stay gone." The ride back was slower, complicated by the need to herd the recovered cattle. By the time they reached the ranch, full darkness had fallen, and Owen could see lamplight in the windows of the house. Rosa must have kept dinner warm, bless her. He was exhausted, saddle sore, and emotionally wrung out, and he could only imagine how Beatrice felt. But when he helped her down from Daisy, she was smiling, her eyes bright with exhilaration. That was extraordinary. Terrifying and dangerous and completely extraordinary. "I feel so alive, Owen. More alive than I have felt since before the fire." He could not help himself. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest, breathing in the scent of her hair mixed with dust and sweat and horse. She melted into the embrace, her arms coming up to wrap around his waist, careful of his scars even through the shirt. "I was so scared for you," he admitted against her hair. "When Dutch made those threats, I wanted to kill him with my bare hands. But you did not. You kept your head and resolved it without violence. That takes more strength than shooting him would have." Beatrice pulled back just enough to look up at him. "You are a good man, Owen Irwin. I am honored to become your wife." He kissed her then, unable to resist any longer. Her lips were soft and warm, and she responded with a hesitance that spoke of inexperience but also a willingness to learn. The kiss was chaste, careful, a promise more than a consummation, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Tomorrow," Owen said firmly. "Tomorrow we ride into town and find a preacher. I want this official. I want everyone to know you are mine." "And you are mine," Beatrice added softly. "Do not forget that part." The wedding took place 2 days later in the small church in Verdi, with Rosa and Miguel standing as witnesses, and half the town crowded into the pews. Reverend Holbrook, an elderly man who divided his time between Verdi and the mining camps to the east, performed the ceremony with genuine warmth. Beatrice wore a new dress that Mrs. Chen, the dressmaker, had completed in record time. A lovely blue cotton that matched her eyes and featured high lace collar that reached her scarred jaw. She had debated wearing the veil but ultimately decided against it, and Owen was proud of her courage. When Reverend Holbrook pronounced them man and wife and invited Owen to kiss his bride, Owen cupped Beatrice's scarred cheek in his palm, just as he had done that first day, and kissed her thoroughly while the congregation applauded. Beatrice blushed scarlet but kissed him back with growing confidence, and Owen felt his heart swell with an emotion he was almost afraid to name. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up outside under the cottonwoods. Rosa had recruited every woman within 10 miles to help prepare food, and the result was a feast that lasted well into the evening. There was music, with old Jeremiah playing a surprisingly delicate fiddle, and several miners contributing harmonica and guitar. Owen danced with his new wife under the stars while their friends and neighbors clapped and sang, and he thought that this might be the happiest moment of his entire life. Later, after the guests had departed and the ranch was quiet again, Owen and Beatrice stood on the porch, watching the moon rise over the Sierra Nevada. Beatrice leaned against his side, fitting perfectly under his arm, and sighed contentedly. "I was so frightened on the stagecoach," she admitted quietly. "Terrified that you would take one look at me and send me back, that this would be just another rejection in a long line of rejections. But you saw me, Owen, really saw me, and you chose me anyway. Not anyway, because of who you are. Every part of you, including the scars." Owen tightened his arm around her shoulders. "Are you tired?" he felt rather than saw her smile. "Not particularly." "Why?" "Because we are married now, properly married, and I thought we might." He trailed off, suddenly uncertain despite the kisses they had shared, the growing intimacy between them. Beatrice turned in his arms, rising on her toes to press a kiss to his jaw. "I thought we might too. Will you be patient with me? I do not know what to do." "Neither do I, really. But we will figure it out together." Owen took her hand and led her inside, to the bedroom they would now share, and closed the door on the rest of the world. What followed was tender and awkward and ultimately beautiful. Two scarred people learning each other's bodies, and finding that the marks they carried were no impediment to pleasure or connection. Owen was careful, attentive, constantly checking that Beatrice was comfortable, that he was not hurting her. She responded with a passionate abandon that surprised them both, and when it was over, they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, both grinning foolishly. That was nothing like I imagined, Beatrice said, tracing patterns on Owen's scarred back with her fingertips. I thought it would be clinical, dutiful, but that was wonderful. We can do it again, Owen offered, only half joking. Right now if you like, or after we rest, or tomorrow. Or every day for the rest of our lives. Beatrice laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. Every day sounds perfect. Owen, I need you to know something. I think I am falling in love with you. I know it is fast, and maybe I should not say it so soon, but after everything that has happened, I do not want to waste time hiding how I feel. Owen rolled to face her, cupping her scarred cheek in his familiar gesture. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you stepped off that stagecoach. You were so brave, so determined to face whatever came, even expecting the worst. And when I lifted your veil and saw your scars, I felt this recognition, like my soul knew yours. We are the same, Beatrice. Two people who survived fire and came out stronger. I love you, she whispered, and the words were a gift, precious and perfect. I love you too. Owen kissed her softly, then with growing intensity, and soon they were lost in each other again, celebrating their union and their unexpected, hard-won happiness. The months that followed were a revelation. Beatrice threw herself into ranch life with an enthusiasm that surprised everyone. She took over the bookkeeping completely, organizing the ledgers and implementing a system that actually made sense. She worked with Rosa in the garden, learning which plants thrived in Nevada's harsh climate and which were doomed to fail. She learned to shoot properly, practicing with Owen until she could hit a tin can at 50 yards. She learned to rope cattle, to brand them, to identify illness and injury in the herd. But more than that, she became the heart of the ranch. Her laughter filled the house, turning it from a functional structure into a real home. She befriended the ranch hands, learning their stories and treating them like family rather than employees. She rode into town once a week to help the schoolteacher, Miss Thompson, with the younger children, teaching them arithmetic and rating. The townspeople, initially uncertain about the scarred Eastern woman, grew to love and respect her for her kindness, and her refusal to be pitied or treated as less than whole. Winter came, bringing snow that blanketed the valley in white and temperatures that dropped below zero. Owen had been right. Beatrice found herself longing for summer heat. But the long winter evenings were perfect for sitting by the fire, reading aloud to each other or simply talking, learning the thousand small details that make up a life. Owen told her about his years on cattle drives, about sleeping under stars and eating dust, and slowly saving every penny to buy his first piece of land. Beatrice told him about Philadelphia, about the factory work and the fire, about the long months of recovery when she had wanted to die rather than face a life marked and scarred. I am glad you survived, Owen said one evening, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the fire. The world would be a darker place without you in it. I am glad I survived too, Beatrice replied. For the first time since the fire, I am truly glad to be alive. Spring brought new challenges. Two of the ranch hands moved on to other opportunities, and Owen had to hire and train replacements. One of the new hires, a young man named Peter, was initially uncomfortable around Beatrice, unable to look directly at her scarred face. But Beatrice handled it with grace, neither acknowledging his discomfort nor allowing it to change her behavior. Within a week, Peter was as devoted to her as the rest of the crew, and Owen overheard him defending Beatrice's beauty to a drunk miner in town who had made a crude comment. Summer arrived with its brutal heat, and with it, Beatrice's first realization that she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. I am going to have a baby, she said simply, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "Our baby. Due in early winter, I think." Owen felt his throat close with emotion. A child, their child, the continuation of the life they were building together. "Are you happy about it?" he managed to ask. Terrified, Beatrice admitted. "But yes, happy. So incredibly happy, Owen. I thought I would never have this, never have a family or children or any of the normal things women hope for. And now I have everything." He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she were made of spun glass. "I will take care of you, whatever you need, whatever the baby needs. We will hire more help for the house so you do not have to work so hard. We will bring a doctor from Sacramento if necessary. I will not take any chances with your health." "I am not fragile," Beatrice protested, but she was smiling. "Women have babies every day, Owen, even scarred women." The pregnancy progressed normally, though Owen fretted constantly. He insisted that Beatrice stop riding out to check the herd, that she rest more, that she eat more. Beatrice tolerated his hovering for about 2 weeks before putting her foot down and declaring that she would live her life normally, until the baby made that impossible. Rosa, who had been through 3 pregnancies herself, supported Beatrice, and together they presented a united front against Owen's overprotectiveness. As Beatrice's belly swelled with the growing child, Owen found himself marveling at the changes in her body, at the way she glowed with health and happiness. He loved placing his hands on her stomach and feeling the baby kick, loved watching Beatrice talk to their unborn child, telling it about the ranch and the horses and the life they would have together. In November, as the first snow began to fall, Beatrice's labor started. It was long and difficult, and Owen aged a dozen years in the 20 hours it took for their son to be born. Rosa attended her, along with Mrs. Chen, who had some midwife training, and Owen paced the porch outside, praying to a God he was not sure he believed in, that Beatrice would survive, that both she and the baby would be all right. When Rosa finally emerged, exhausted but smiling, and told him he had a son and that Beatrice was asking for him, Owen nearly collapsed with relief. He rushed inside to find Beatrice propped up in bed, pale and exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. When she looked up at him, her eyes were full of tears and joy. "Meet our son," she said softly, tilting the bundle so Owen could see the tiny red face, the shock of dark hair, the impossibly small fingers curled into fists. "He is perfect, Owen. Absolutely perfect." Owen sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the miracle they had created. His son. Their son. A tiny life that would grow and learn and carry their legacy forward. "What should we name him?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "I was thinking Thomas Owen Irwin." "Thomas after your father, Owen after you, if that is all right." "It is more than all right. It is perfect." Owen carefully took the baby from Beatrice, marveling at how light he was, how fragile. Little Thomas fussed slightly, then settled against Owen's chest, apparently content with his new world. "Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you for surviving that fire. Thank you for answering my advertisement. Thank you for being brave enough to come west and build this life with me. Thank you for this perfect son. Thank you for everything." Beatrice reached up and cupped his scarred cheek, mirroring the gesture he had made to her that first day. "Thank you for seeing past my scars, for loving me when I thought I was unlovable, for giving me a home and a family and a reason to hope again. I love you, Owen Irwin. I love you with everything I am." He leaned down carefully, mindful of the baby in his arms, and kissed her softly. "I love you too, always and forever." Little Thomas grew quickly, a healthy, happy baby who seemed to delight in every aspect of ranch life. By the time he was 6 months old, He was trying to crawl, eager to explore his world. Beatrice recovered her strength and threw herself back into ranch work, though now she had the added responsibility of caring for an infant. Rosa helped enormously, as did Maria, who was enchanted with the baby and begged to be allowed to hold him constantly. As Thomas approached his first birthday, Owen realized that the ranch had never been more prosperous or more full of life. The herd had grown to nearly 5,000 head. He had hired 3 more ranch hands and built an additional bunkhouse to accommodate them. The house had been expanded as well, with 2 new bedrooms added to accommodate their growing family. Beatrice managed everything with calm efficiency, from the bookkeeping to the household to raising Thomas, and Owen fell more in love with her every single day. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching Thomas toddle around the yard under Rosa's watchful eye, Beatrice turned to Owen with a familiar smile. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand. "I am pregnant again. Another baby due next spring." Owen pulled her close, joy flooding through him. "Another blessing. Another miracle. Are you happy?" deliriously. "I always wanted a large family, Owen. I want this house filled with children and laughter and life. I want to give our children everything I never had: stability, love, a sense of belonging. Is that all right with you?" "It is more than all right. It is everything I have ever wanted too." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair. "We have built something extraordinary here, Beatrice. Not just the ranch, but this family, this life. You and me and Thomas and this new baby on the way. We have taken our pain and our scars and built something beautiful from them." Their daughter, Sarah Rose Irwin, was born in April 1881, a tiny, delicate baby with auburn hair like her mother and blue eyes that would eventually turn hazel like Owen's. The birth was easier than Thomas's had been, and Beatrice recovered quickly, eager to get back to managing the ranch. Thomas, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and insisted on helping with everything from diaper changes to feeding times. 2 years later, another son arrived, Henry James Irwin, followed 18 months after that by twin girls, Emma and Elizabeth. The house, which had once echoed with loneliness, now rang with children's laughter and the constant chaos of a large family. Owen expanded the house twice more to accommodate everyone, and Beatrice hired 2 young women from town to help with childcare and household duties. The ranch continued to prosper. Owen's reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle spread throughout Nevada and into California. He began breeding his own stock, developing a line known for hardiness and beef quality. Beatrice's bookkeeping skills ensured that they weathered the economic downturns that devastated other ranchers, and her careful management of resources meant they always had reserves to fall back on. The children grew up surrounded by love and purpose. Thomas showed an early aptitude for ranching and was riding alongside his father by the time he was 6. Sarah had her mother's head for numbers, and by age 8 was helping with the ranch accounts. Henry loved the horses and spent every spare moment in the barn with James, learning everything about training and care. The twins were still young but showed signs of their parents' determination and intelligence. As the years passed, Owen and Beatrice became pillars of the Verde community. They donated money to build a proper school and helped fund the town's first real church building. Beatrice started a lending library in town and organized a women's group that advocated for better conditions for factory and laundry workers. Owen served on the town council and helped mediate disputes between ranchers and miners over water rights and land use. But despite their public roles and their large, demanding family, Owen and Beatrice always made time for each other. Every evening, after the children were in bed, They would sit on the porch together, holding hands and watching the stars, talking about their day and their dreams and the extraordinary life they had built together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Beatrice with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children in Rosa's capable care and took the train west, spending a week exploring the city and enjoying the luxury of being alone together. Owen bought Beatrice a new dress from a fancy shop, deep blue silk that made her eyes shine. She protested the extravagance, but he insisted, and when she wore it to dinner at a fine restaurant, he could not take his eyes off her. "You are staring," she said, smiling at him over her wine glass. "I am appreciating. My beautiful, brilliant, extraordinary wife. Do you know what I see when I look at you, Beatrice?" "Scars," she suggested, her tone light but with an edge of old pain. "I see the woman who was brave enough to step off a stagecoach into an unknown future. I see the mother of my children, the partner in my business, the love of my life. I see courage and strength and beauty that goes far deeper than skin. I see my home and my heart and my everything. The scars are just part of you, like my scars are part of me. They do not define you. They are simply evidence of what you survived to get here, to be with me." Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes. "Even after 10 years, you still know exactly what to say to make me fall in love with you all over again. Good. I intend to keep doing that for the next 50 years. Owen raised his glass. "To us. To everything we have survived and everything we have built, to the life we have made together." "To us," Beatrice echoed, touching her glass to his. "Always and forever." They returned to the ranch refreshed and ready to tackle the challenges of their busy life. Thomas was now 12 and taking on more responsibility with the cattle. Sarah was 10 and had announced her intention to become a lawyer, much to everyone's surprise and delight. Henry, at 8, was already showing signs of becoming an expert horseman. The twins, at 6, were a whirlwind of energy and mischief who kept everyone on their toes. The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and growth. There were hard times. A brutal winter in 1885 that killed 100 head of cattle and nearly bankrupted them. A drought the following summer that dried up half the water sources. A bout of influenza that swept through the ranch and nearly took Sarah from them. But there were far more good times. Thomas's first solo cattle drive at 16. Sarah's acceptance to a women's college in San Francisco. Henry winning the horse race at the county fair 3 years running. The twins' beautiful singing voices that earned them recognition throughout the region. Owen and Beatrice aged together gracefully, their hair going gray, their faces lining with the marks of a life well lived. But the connection between them never dimmed. They still held hands on the porch every evening. They still made love regularly, finding joy and comfort in each other's familiar bodies. They still looked at each other with the same love and wonder they had felt that first day when Owen had cupped Beatrice's scarred cheek and told her he saw only beauty. By 1895, Owen was 50 and Beatrice was 44. Thomas had taken over most of the day-to-day management of the ranch, allowing Owen to slow down slightly. Sarah had graduated from college and was indeed studying law, one of only a handful of women in the entire country pursuing such a career. Henry had married a lovely young woman named Catherine and was starting his own horse breeding operation on land adjacent to the ranch. The twins, now 16, were preparing to attend finishing school in Sacramento, though Emma had expressed interest in becoming a doctor and Elizabeth wanted to be a teacher. One evening, as Owen and Beatrice sat in their customary spot on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains they had called home for nearly 20 years, Beatrice turned to her husband with a contented sigh. "You ever think about how different our lives might have been?" she asked. If I had not answered your advertisement, if you had turned me away when you saw my scars. Every day, Owen admitted. And every day I thank God or fate or whatever power brought you to me. You saved my life, Beatrice. I was existing before you came, going through the motions, but I was not truly living. You taught me what it means to love and be loved, to build something meaningful, to have a real family and a real home. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You saved my life too, Beatrice replied softly. After the fire, I was just trying to survive, to get through each day without breaking down completely. I had no hope, no future, nothing to look forward to except more rejection and pain. But then you touched my face and told me you saw only beauty, and everything changed. You gave me back my life, Owen. You gave me love and family and purpose. You gave me everything. Owen pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her shoulders, and Beatrice nestled against his side, fitting perfectly as she always had. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Inside the house, they could hear Rosa directing her grandchildren in cleaning up after dinner. Thomas and his wife Margaret were discussing plans for expanding the herd next spring. Catherine was singing a lullaby to her and Henry's new baby, their first grandchild. The twins were arguing about something inconsequential, their voices rising and falling in the familiar rhythm of sisterly debate. This was their legacy, Owen thought. Not just the land or the cattle or the successful ranch that now spanned over 10,000 acres. But this, family, love, connection, the knowledge that they had taken their pain and transformed it into something beautiful and lasting. Their children would carry that forward, would teach their own children about resilience and courage and the importance of seeing past surface appearances to the truth beneath. "I love you, Beatrice Irwin," Owen said into the gathering darkness. "I have loved you since the moment I first saw you, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. I love you too, Owen Irwin." Beatrice tilted her face up for a kiss, and Owen obliged gladly. "Thank you for being the kind of man who could look past scars to see the person underneath. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me. Thank you for every moment of every day we have had together. The pleasure has been entirely mine." Owen deepened the kiss, still finding joy and desire in the familiar taste of his wife's lips even after nearly 20 years of marriage. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. They remained on the porch for another hour, talking quietly about their children and grandchildren, making plans for the future, reminiscing about the past. When they finally went inside and climbed the stairs to their bedroom, they moved with the easy synchronization of two people who had shared a life and a bed for 2 decades. As they settled into sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Owen thought about that day in August 1878 when the Stagecoach had brought a scarred bride to Verdi, Nevada. He had been so nervous, so uncertain about what to expect. He had imagined 100 different scenarios, but none of them had come close to the reality of Beatrice. Her strength, her intelligence, her capacity for love, her ability to transform a house into a home and a lonely rancher into a husband and father. The scars that had marked them both, the fire that had shaped their lives in such profound ways, had ultimately been the thing that brought them together and allowed them to truly see each other. They understood pain and survival in ways that others could not. They knew the value of acceptance, of being loved not despite their damage but including it, scars and all. That understanding had become the foundation of their marriage, the bedrock upon which they had built everything else. It had taught them empathy, patience, and the importance of looking beneath the surface. It had made them better partners, better parents, better people. As Owen drifted off to sleep, Beatrice's head resting on his shoulder, her breath warm against his neck, he felt profound gratitude for the unexpected journey that had brought them together. A mail-order bride with a scarred face, a lonely rancher with hidden burns. Two damaged people who had found wholeness in each other's arms and built a life more beautiful than either had dared to dream possible. Outside, the Nevada wind whispered through the cottonwoods, carrying the scent of sage and cattle and the river that had witnessed their entire story. The stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. The ranch slept peacefully, protected and prosperous. And inside the house they had built together, two people who had survived fire and found love held each other close, grateful beyond words for the scarred, beautiful, extraordinary life they shared. Years continued to unfold with the gentle rhythm of seasons. Owen and Beatrice grew older together, their bodies aging but their love only deepening with time. They celebrated their 20th anniversary surrounded by children and grandchildren, a feast that lasted an entire day and brought together friends from across Nevada and California. By then, they had 6 grandchildren with more on the way, and the ranch had become one of the most successful cattle operations in the entire region. Sarah, true to her word, had become a lawyer, one of the first women to practice law in Nevada. She used her position to advocate for workers' rights and women's suffrage, making her parents proud even when her controversial positions caused difficulties. Thomas had proven himself a gifted rancher, taking the operation his father had built and expanding it even further while maintaining the values of fair dealing and quality that Owen had instilled. Henry's horse breeding program had gained national recognition, and buyers came from as far as Chicago to purchase his stock. The twins had both pursued education, Emma eventually becoming a nurse and Elizabeth a teacher, just as they had planned. Through it all, Owen and Beatrice remained the center of the family, the touchstone that everyone returned to. Their love story had become legendary in Verdi, told and retold until it took on the quality of myth. People spoke of the scarred bride and the cowboy who had looked past her damaged face to see her beautiful soul, who had touched her cheek and spoken words that changed both their lives forever. The scars that had once seemed like curses had become part of their family's identity, symbols of survival and resilience that were honored rather than hidden. Beatrice never wore a veil after that first day, holding her head high and meeting the world with confidence. Her children and grandchildren learned from her example that appearances meant nothing compared to character, that damage could be transformed into strength, that love was powerful enough to heal even the deepest wounds. Owen's back scars, too, became part of the family story, shared with children who needed to understand that their grandfather had survived his own fire, his own loss, his own pain. He taught them that scars were nothing to be ashamed of, that they were simply evidence of battles fought and survived, proof of strength rather than weakness. As they entered their 60s and then their 70s, Owen and Beatrice gradually stepped back from active ranch management, content to let the younger generation take over while they enjoyed a well-earned rest. They traveled some, visiting Sarah in San Francisco and taking a memorable trip to New York City to see the growing modern metropolis. But they always returned to Verdi, to the ranch that had been the site of their greatest triumphs and deepest joys, to the porch where they had spent countless evenings watching the sun set over the mountains. On their 30th anniversary, the entire family gathered for a celebration that lasted 3 days. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren filled the ranch house to bursting. There was music and dancing, elaborate meals and heartfelt toasts, laughter and tears and endless reminiscing. On the final evening, as the party wound down and the younger people settled in for one last night before dispersing back to their own lives, Owen and Beatrice found themselves alone on the porch in their customary spot, watching the stars. 30 years, Beatrice marveled, her hand clasped tightly in Owen's. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I stepped off that stagecoach, so frightened and uncertain. Other times it feels like we have been together forever, like I cannot remember a life before you. I feel the same way. Owen's voice was rougher now, aged by time and use but still warm with love. Do you have any regrets, Beatrice? Anything you wish had been different? She was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. Then she shook her head. Not a single one. Not even the fire, as terrible as it was, because without it I might never have come west. I might never have met you. And this life we have built together, this family, this love, it is worth every moment of pain it took to get here. What about you? Any regrets? Only one, Owen admitted. I regret that I have only one lifetime to spend with you. I wish I could have 1,000 lifetimes, each one spent loving you and building dreams with you and growing old by your side. But since I only get this one life, I am grateful beyond words that I get to spend it with you. Beatrice turned to him, tears streaming down her face, tracking through the familiar landscape of her scars. That is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. Even more beautiful than that first day when you told me you saw only beauty. Owen Irwin, you have given me everything I ever wanted and so much I never knew I needed. You have been my partner, my lover, my best friend, the father of my children, the anchor of my life. I love you more today than I did 30 years ago, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. My love for you just keeps growing, expanding, becoming more than I thought possible. They kissed then, long and slow and sweet. Two old people who had loved each other through 3 decades of joy and sorrow, triumph and hardship, who had built something extraordinary together, and knew with absolute certainty that they would love each other until their last breaths and beyond. The years that followed were gentler, quieter, but no less full of love. Owen's health began to decline in his mid-70s, his body finally showing the effects of decades of hard physical labor. Beatrice cared for him with the same fierce devotion she had shown throughout their marriage, and when he protested that she should not be waiting on him, she would simply smile and remind him that they had vowed to care for each other in sickness and in health. Besides, she would say, arranging pillows behind his back or bringing him his favorite tea, you have spent 35 years taking care of me. It is my turn now. On a clear spring morning in 1910, with the smell of fresh grass and wildflowers drifting through the open window, Owen Irwin died peacefully in his sleep, Beatrice's hand clasped in his, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who had come to say goodbye. He was 77 years old and had lived a life fuller and richer than he had ever imagined possible. Beatrice grieved deeply, as was only natural after losing the love of her life, but she did not fall apart. Owen had taught her too well about resilience, about survival, about carrying on. She lived another 8 years, surrounded by family, still managing some of the ranch's bookkeeping, still offering advice and wisdom to anyone who sought it. She saw more great-grandchildren born, saw Sarah argue a case before the Nevada Supreme Court, saw Thomas's son take over as ranch foreman, continuing the legacy his grandfather had begun. On a warm August afternoon in 1918, almost exactly 40 years after she had first arrived in Verdi, Beatrice Owens Irwin passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 81 years old. Her family buried her next to Owen on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the cottonwood trees they had loved, where they could watch over the land and the family they had built together. The ranch continued to prosper for generations, passed down through the family, each generation adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Owen and Beatrice had laid. The house was preserved and expanded, becoming a sprawling family compound where descendants gathered for holidays and celebrations. The original bedroom, where Owen and Beatrice had slept and loved and dreamed together, was kept as they had left it, a shrine to the enduring power of their love. And always, the story was told and retold. The story of the scarred bride who arrived on a stagecoach in 1878, frightened and uncertain, expecting rejection. The story of the cowboy who had looked past her damaged face to see the beautiful, courageous, extraordinary woman beneath. The story of how he had cupped her scarred cheek in his hand and spoken the words that changed both their lives. "I see only beauty." It became more than just a family story. It became a legend, a testament to the transformative power of love, to the importance of seeing people clearly rather than judging by appearances, to the truth that damage and scars do not diminish worth, but rather add depth and character. Parents told it to their children. Grandparents shared it with grandchildren. It was written down, painted, even made into a song that was sung at weddings and celebrations, because it was not just a story about two people who fell in love. It was a story about healing and acceptance, about survival and courage, about building something beautiful from pain and loss. It was a story that reminded people that everyone carries scars, visible or hidden, and that those scars do not define us unless we let them. It was a story about hope in the face of despair, about love conquering fear, about two damaged souls finding wholeness in each other. And somewhere on a hill in Nevada under the cottonwood trees, two people who had loved each other fiercely and well-rested side by side, their story complete, their legacy secure, their love eternal. The stagecoach had brought a scarred bride. The cowboy had touched her face and said he saw only beauty. And from that moment, two lives that had been marked by fire and pain had been transformed into something magnificent, a love story for the ages, a testament to the enduring power of seeing and being seen, of loving and being loved, exactly as we are.